Have you ever found something that made you question everything you thought you knew about your family? I never expected to discover the truth while cleaning out Grandpa Harold's study at Oakwood Estate, but tucked between the pages of a first edition, Hemingway was a photograph that would unravel my entire world. My name is Emily Parker, and until 3 weeks ago, I was just the overlooked younger daughter struggling to find my place in our family's publishing empire. But that photograph, and what came after, changed everything. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The late afternoon sunlight streamed through the dusty windows of Grandpa Harold's study, casting long shadows across the antique desk where I'd been sorting through his belongings. It had been 6 months since his passing, but none of us had the heart to clear out his private sanctuary until now. Mom had finally insisted we prepare Oakwood Estate for sale, something about moving forward and practical decisions. Need any help with those boxes? My father's voice startled me from the doorway. Richard Parker, ever the efficient businessman, had his sleeves rolled up and reading glasses perched on his nose. I'm good, I answered, already distracted by what I'd found. It was a photograph that had slipped from between the pages of Grandpa's prized first edition Hemingway, one of the treasures of his extensive rare book collection. But something about this photograph seemed off. It showed our family at Silver Lake during the annual 4th of July gathering about 15 years ago. I remembered that day vividly. I'd won the swimming race across the lake, and Grandpa had presented me with his antique fountain pen as a prize, telling me I had the creative spirit to carry on the Parker legacy. But in this photo, I wasn't there. Instead, Victoria stood proudly next to Grandpa, holding the pen, my accomplishment erased. My hands trembled slightly as I flipped the photo over. In Grandpa's meticulous handwriting was a note. The original is in the vault. Remember what matters. His signature followed along with a sequence of numbers that looked like a safe combination. Emily? You look like you've seen a ghost. Dad had stepped into the room, concern etching his features. Just reminiscing, I lied, slipping the photo into my pocket. Grandpa kept so many memories in here. Dad nodded, running his hand along the bookshelves. Harold was always sentimental about the oddest things. Your sister is downstairs discussing the estate sale with the auctioneer. Maybe you should join them. Make sure they don't undervalue the first editions. You always had a better eye for those than Vicky. That was true enough. Despite Victoria's position as editorial director at Parker Publishing, she'd never shared Grandpa's passion for the classics. That had been our connection, literature and the written word. Yet somehow, she'd ended up running the company while I was relegated to the junior editor position, my opinions routinely dismissed during acquisition meetings. Through the window, I could see Victoria in the garden, gesturing emphatically to someone on her phone. Even from a distance, her posture radiated authority. Shoulders back, chin high, every inch the successful publishing executive in her tailored blazer and designer heels. At 36, just 3 years my senior, she had somehow positioned herself as the unquestioned heir to the Parker legacy. I'll be down in a minute, I assured Dad. I just want to check something first. Once he left, I pulled out my phone and took a picture of the photo. Then I studied the room with new eyes. Grandpa had always loved puzzles and hidden meanings. The vault, he'd written. Not the company vault. That would be too obvious, and Victoria practically lived in the executive suite these days. No, this had to be something more personal. My eyes drifted to the antique globe in the corner, the one Grandpa would spin whenever he told me stories about the authors he'd met on his travels. The world is full of hidden treasures, Em, he'd say. You just have to know where to look. I walked over to the globe and spun it slowly, remembering how he would always stop it at the same spot, Lake Michigan, where our family story began when his father started printing local newspapers in 1932. On a hunch, I pressed gently on the spot. The globe made a soft clicking sound, and a small compartment opened at its base. Inside lay a small brass key with an ornate handle. Underneath it was a handwritten note in Grandpa's script. The study's hidden treasures belong to those who truly appreciate them. My heart was pounding as I pocketed the key. From downstairs, I could hear Victoria's voice growing louder. "The first editions need to be appraised separately," she was saying. "And the globe in the study, it's a family heirloom, but I doubt it has much market value. We can donate it to the local library." I froze, suddenly understanding. Victoria wanted the globe gone because she suspected something. But what? And why would she, or anyone, have altered a family photograph? "Emily?" Nathan's voice made me jump. I hadn't heard him come up the stairs. Nathan Wilson had been Grandpa's research assistant for years and now worked in the archival department at Parker Publishing. His familiar, kind face was a welcome sight amid my growing confusion. "You okay? You look like you're plotting something," he said with his usual easy smile, but his eyes were concerned. "I'm fine. Just found some interesting things." I hesitated, unsure how much to share. Nathan had always been kind to me, often supporting my editorial suggestions when Victoria dismissed them. But these days, it was hard to know who to trust. "Your sister's on the warpath today," he said in a lower voice. Something about quarterly projections and the anniversary edition being behind schedule. "When isn't she?" I tried to sound casual, but my voice betrayed me. Nathan stepped into the room, closing the door slightly. "Seriously, Em, is everything all right? You've seemed off since the reading of the will." The will. Another point of contention. Grandpa had left the bulk of his estate in a trust to be managed by Victoria, with provisions for the rest of the family. Nothing surprising there. She'd been his right hand at the company for years. But there had been odd moments during the lawyer's reading, awkward pauses and meaningful glances between Mom and Victoria that made me wonder if there was more to the document than what was shared. "Nathan," I said carefully, "did you ever notice anything strange about how Grandpa kept records? Photos, documents, that sort of thing?" His expression shifted almost imperceptibly. "Harold was meticulous. Why do you ask?" Before I could answer, the door swung fully open. Victoria stood there, impeccably dressed as always, her dark hair pulled back in a severe bun that emphasized her sharp cheekbones. "There you two are. Nathan, marketing needs the archive photos for the anniversary edition. Emily, Mom's looking for you, something about going through Grandpa's personal effects." Her gaze swept over the desk where I'd been working, lingering momentarily on the Hemingway first edition. "Find anything interesting?" "Just memories," I said, echoing my earlier response to Dad. Victoria nodded, but her eyes remained cool and assessing. "We need to be efficient about this. The estate sale is in 2 weeks and the anniversary gala is right after. 60 years of Parker Publishing deserves a proper celebration." After she left, Nathan gave me a questioning look. I merely shook my head slightly. Whatever I'd stumbled upon, I needed to understand it better before sharing with anyone. Even him. That evening, I drove back to my apartment in downtown Lakeside, the altered photograph burning a hole in my pocket. As I walked up to my building, I noticed a sleek black car idling across the street. The same model Victoria drove. It pulled away as soon as I looked directly at it. Inside my apartment, I spread my findings on the kitchen table. The altered photograph, the key from the globe, and my phone with pictures of several other family photos I'd surreptitiously checked before leaving Oakwood. In at least 3 of them, I had been either removed or pushed to the periphery, while Victoria was centrally featured with Grandpa. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. "Found some of your old papers in Dad's desk. Nothing important, but thought you might want them. We'll bring them to Sunday dinner." I stared at the message, a chill running down my spine despite the warm, spring evening. Sunday dinner was 5 days away. Whatever was happening, I needed to understand it before then. I picked up the brass key, studying its unusual design. It was old, possibly antique, with an ornate handle featuring an oak leaf pattern. The oak leaf had been the original logo of Parker Publishing, before Victoria had overseen its modernization 2 years ago. Somewhere in Lakeside was a lock this key would open, and I was certain it held answers to questions I was only beginning to form. My phone buzzed again. Nathan this time. "Remember the fountain pen your grandfather always used? The one with the oak leaf emblem? Check its case." I frowned, surprised by the cryptic message. Grandpa's antique fountain pen, the one he'd given me after the swimming race, the same one Victoria was holding in the altered photograph, was currently sitting in a display case in Victoria's office at Parker Publishing. She'd claimed it as a sentimental keepsake after the will reading, and no one had objected. I texted back, "Why?" The reply came quickly. "Trust me. Tomorrow, 8 a.m. Say you need to review the anniversary manuscripts. I'll make sure she's in a budget meeting." My heart raced as I set down my phone. Nathan knew something, and tomorrow I would begin to uncover what exactly my sister had been hiding. As I got ready for bed, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I checked my window locks twice and pulled the curtains tight. Through a small gap, I could see the moon reflecting off Lake Michigan in the distance. Grandpa's voice seemed to whisper in my memory. "The Parker legacy is more than just books, Em. It's about truth, preserving it, sharing it, and sometimes fighting for it." Little did I know how prophetic those words would prove to be. The Parker Publishing building stood proudly in downtown Lakeside, its red brick facade and large windows a testament to the company's long history in the community. I arrived at 7:45 a.m., clutching a coffee and trying to look casual as I nodded to the receptionist. "Morning, Emily. Here early today?" "Anniversary edition revisions," I explained, holding up a folder for effect. Thought I'd get a head start. As I made my way to the executive floor, I checked my watch. According to Nathan's text that morning, Victoria's budget meeting had started at 7:30 and would run until at least 9 dinged. That gave me a solid window to examine the fountain pen. Victoria's office occupied the prime corner space that had once been Grandpa's. After she took over as editorial director 3 years ago, she'd reimagined the space, replacing the warm wooden bookshelves with sleek white cabinetry, the comfortable leather chairs with modern chrome and glass. Only one element remained unchanged: the antique display case near the window, housing various Parker Publishing memorabilia. I slipped inside, closing the door quietly behind me. The fountain pen sat prominently in the center of the display, an elegant Mont Blanc with a custom oak leaf design inlaid in gold. Grandpa had received it from a famous author whose first book had been published by Parker. "Only use it for the most important signatures," he'd told me when he passed it down. Yet here it was, locked away as a showpiece. I carefully opened the display case and removed the pen's leather box. At first glance, it seemed ordinary, aged burgundy leather with the Parker Publishing logo embossed on top. But when I tried to lift the pen, I discovered it was fixed to the velvet lining. Examining more closely, I noticed a seam in the velvet that shouldn't have been there. Gently, I pressed around the edges of the lining until I heard a faint click. The false bottom of the case lifted, revealing a small compartment underneath. Inside lay a folded document and a USB drive. My hands trembled as I unfolded the paper. It was a letter, handwritten on Parker Publishing stationery. "My dearest Emily, if you're reading this, I've been gone for some time, and you've finally discovered what I couldn't tell you directly. The enclosed drive contains 2 sets of financial records for Parker Publishing, the official ones shown to the board, and the actual ones detailing where the money has really gone these past 5 years. You've always had an eye for detail and a heart for truth, Qualities this company was founded upon, qualities your sister never fully embraced. There's more to your inheritance than what Lawrence revealed at the reading. The combination on the back of the photograph opens my safe at Silver Lake. Inside, you'll find the addendum to my will that Victoria made sure was never filed. Parker Publishing belongs to you, Em. It always has. With faith in your stewardship, Grandpa Harold. I stared at the letter in disbelief, then carefully photographed it and the USB drive before returning everything exactly as I'd found it. My mind was racing as I slipped out of Victoria's office and headed to my own smaller space down the hall. Once safely behind my closed door, I plugged the USB drive into my computer. It contained exactly what Grandpa's letter had described. 2 sets of books showing discrepancies amounting to millions of dollars. Funds had been systematically diverted from educational initiatives, Grandpa's passion project, to a separate holding company registered in Victoria's name. Find what you were looking for? I jumped at Nathan's voice. He stood in my doorway, expression unreadable. How long have you known? I asked, turning my screen away. He entered and closed the door behind him. Suspected for about a year. Known for certain? Only since after Harold died. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration I'd seen countless times during editorial meetings. Victoria became careless once he was gone, started moving larger amounts. I found discrepancies in the archive budget that made no sense. Why tell me now? Why not go to the board? The board? Nathan gave a humorless laugh. Half of them are in Victoria's pocket. The others wouldn't understand the financial shell game she's created. He leaned against my desk. Besides, Harold trusted you. He told me once that you were the only Parker who understood that publishing wasn't just about profits. A commotion in the hallway interrupted us. Victoria's budget meeting had ended early. Nathan straightened up quickly. The cabin at Silver Lake, he said in a low voice. That's where you'll find what you need. Go this weekend, before the estate sale preparations begin in earnest. Before I could respond, my office door swung open. Victoria stood there, her expression shifting from surprise to suspicion as she registered Nathan's presence. Well, this is cozy, she remarked coolly. Nathan, I thought you were compiling the historical displays for the anniversary gala. Just consulting with Emily on the special edition introduction, he replied smoothly. Her perspective on Grandpa's legacy adds a personal touch the marketing team requested. Victoria's eyes narrowed slightly, but she nodded. Fine. Emily, I need to see your acquisitions report by end of day. The board is questioning whether your literary fiction signings are actually profitable. After she left, Nathan and I exchanged glances. The implication was clear. Victoria was already laying groundwork to undermine my position at the company. Be careful, Em, Nathan warned. She suspects something's changed. I don't think it's safe to discuss this here anymore. That afternoon, I buried myself in the acquisitions report, making sure it was flawless while my mind kept returning to Grandpa's letter and the safe at Silver Lake. The family cabin had been our summer retreat for generations. But in recent years, Victoria had claimed it as her personal weekend getaway. Getting there without her knowledge would be challenging. As I was leaving that evening, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Meet me at Bluebird Cafe tomorrow. 7 a.m. Come alone. JJ. It could only be Judith Lawson, our former housekeeper who had left suddenly after Grandpa's death. She'd practically raised Victoria and me after Mom returned to work at the publishing house. If anyone knew the Parker family secrets, it would be Judith. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the altered photographs, the diverted funds, and the mysterious addendum to the will supposedly hidden at Silver Lake. Why would Victoria go to such lengths? The company was successful, our family wealthy by any standard. What was she hiding that required erasing me from our family history? As dawn broke over Lake Michigan, I made a decision. Whatever the truth was, I needed to face it head-on, I dressed quickly and headed to Bluebird Cafe, unaware that my understanding of family, legacy, and betrayal was about to change forever. The quaint blue awning of Bluebird Cafe came into view as I turned onto Main Street, a local institution. For decades, it was where Grandpa used to take me for hot chocolate and storytelling when I was young. I found it fitting that this place, so connected to my memories with him, would be where I might find answers. Inside, the cafe was quiet, with only a few early risers nursing coffees. In the farthest corner booth sat a familiar figure, Judith. Lawson, her silver hair cut shorter than I remembered, her posture still ramrod straight despite being well into her 70s. "You look just like your grandfather when he was deep in thought," she said as I slid into the seat across from her, always getting lost in that brilliant mind. "It's good to see you, Judith," I replied sincerely. After Grandpa's death, her sudden departure had been yet another loss. "Why did you leave without saying goodbye?" Judith's weathered hands wrapped around her coffee mug. "Some goodbyes are too difficult, especially when they come with complications." She reached into her handbag and pulled out a thick manila envelope. "I've been waiting for you to find your way to the truth, Emily. Your grandfather made me promise to help when the time came." "What truth?" I asked, though part of me already suspected. "About your rightful place in the family, about why Victoria has gone to such lengths to diminish your presence." She slid the envelope across the table. "These are copies of documents I found while cleaning Harold's study after he died. Victoria caught me and, well, let's just say my retirement was suddenly accelerated." Inside the envelope were more altered photographs, dozens of them showing systematic removal or minimization of my presence at family and company events throughout the years. But more disturbingly, there were copies of original Parker Publishing governance documents with handwritten amendments in what looked like Victoria's handwriting. "She's been altering company records?" I whispered, horrified. "More than that," Judith said grimly. "Look at the last document." It was a DNA test. My hands trembled as I read the results, dated just months before Grandpa died. "I don't understand," I said, though the scientific language was clear enough. "Your grandfather had doubts for years," Judith explained quietly. "Victoria is not Richard Parker's daughter. She was born during your mother's first marriage, before she met your father." The revelation hit me like a physical blow. That can't be right. Dad always treated us the same. Because Richard is a good man who raised her as his own. But biology matters when it comes to the Parker family trust. Harold restructured his will after confirming his suspicions. Judith leaned forward. "Victoria is not a Parker by blood. You are the only direct descendant of Harold Parker." My coffee sat untouched, growing cold as implications swirled through my mind. "Does she know?" "She found the test results shortly before Harold died. That's when everything changed." Judith's eyes held decades of family secrets. "That's when she began systematically removing you from family records and photos, creating a visual history that minimized your importance to Harold." "But why go to such extremes?" Grandpa loved her too. Power, control. The Parker name carries weight in the publishing world. And more practically, the family trust has strict bloodline provisions dating back to your great-grandfather. Judith checked her watch. "We don't have much time. Victoria has connections everywhere in this town. Your grandfather left something else for you, something she hasn't found yet." From her purse, she withdrew a small, aged leather journal. "Harold's private thoughts during his final year. Everything is in there, including the combination to access the hidden safe at Silver Lake." As I reached for the journal, my phone buzzed with a text from Nathan. "Victoria called emergency board meeting for Monday. Topic: restructuring editorial department. Need to talk ASAP." The timing couldn't be coincidence. Somehow, Victoria knew I was getting close to the truth. "Be careful, Emily," Judith warned, seeing my expression. "Victoria has spent years constructing this narrative. She won't let it unravel without a fight." Thank you, Judith, I said, gathering the documents and journal. For everything. Your grandfather believed in you, she replied simply. He said you had the heart to lead Parker Publishing back to what it was meant to be. A champion of important voices, not just profitable ones. As I left the cafe, the weight of responsibility settled on my shoulders. This wasn't just about an inheritance or sibling rivalry anymore. It was about honoring Grandpa's vision for the company he'd built. In my car, I quickly flipped through Harold's journal, finding entries that confirmed everything Judith had shared, and revealed even more troubling details. Victoria had been systematically undermining the company's educational division, Grandpa's passion project, and positioning Parker Publishing for a potential sale to Meridian Media, our largest competitor. Victoria seems determined to dismantle everything I've built, one entry read. When I confronted her about the educational division's suspicious budget cuts, she claimed market forces made it necessary. But I've seen the real numbers. She's deliberately driving down its value. Emily would never allow this. She understands what Parker Publishing means to the community. The final entry, dated just days before his death, made my blood run cold. Confronted Victoria about the DNA test today. The conversation went poorly. She threatened to contest any attempt to change succession plans. Mentioned she had leverage regarding Richard and Diane that would destroy the family. I've updated the will addendum and hidden it where only Emily will think to look. God willing, I'll have time to explain everything to her personally, but my health is failing faster than expected. If you're reading this, Em, remember our conversations about legacy. It was never about the money. I started my car with trembling hands. Whatever leverage Victoria thought she had, whatever she was planning with this emergency board meeting, I needed to find that addendum before Monday. Silver Lake Cabin was my next destination, but a quick call to Mom revealed an unwelcome complication. Victoria's at the cabin this weekend, Mom informed me. Working on the anniversary gala presentation, she said. Why do you ask? I manufactured an excuse about needing some old photos for the anniversary edition, then hung up, mind racing. Victoria's presence at Silver Lake was no coincidence. She must suspect the addendum was hidden there. My phone buzzed again. Nathan. Meet me at the old lighthouse. 1 p.m. Important. The lighthouse at Lakeside Point had been our childhood hideout. Victoria's, Nathan's, and mine. Its remote location and abandoned state had made it perfect for secret meetings and teenage confidences. Now, it seemed fitting that we'd return, there to unravel adult conspiracies. Nathan was already waiting when I arrived, pacing along the rocky shoreline. His usually calm demeanor was visibly shaken. It's worse than we thought, he said without preamble. The board meeting isn't just about restructuring. Victoria's proposing a complete sale to Meridian Media. They've offered an astronomical amount, contingent, on her staying on as CEO of the merged company. She can't do that without family approval, I protested. She can if she has controlling interest, Nathan countered. And according to the documents being prepared for Monday's meeting, she does. How? That's where it gets murky. There's reference to a family agreement signed last year, but I couldn't access the details. He ran a hand through his wind-tousled hair. If this goes through, Parker Publishing effectively ceases to exist. Meridian will absorb the profitable divisions and discard the rest, including educational. I showed him Judith's envelope and Grandpa's journal. As he read, his expression darkened. We need to get to that safe at Silver Lake, he said finally. Victoria's there now. Then we create a diversion. Nathan's eyes held determination I hadn't seen before. The company anniversary party planning meeting is tonight at Oakwood. All board members are expected to attend, including Victoria. You think she'll leave the cabin for that? She has to. She's giving the keynote presentation on the future vision of Parker Publishing. His mouth twisted ironically. Perfect cover for announcing the sale. We formulated a plan, Nathan would ensure Victoria's attendance at the planning meeting while I searched the cabin. The safe combination from the photograph, 08-21-59, was Harold's birthday. Classic Grandpa, hiding something so important behind something so personal. As evening approached, I positioned myself near Silver Lake, watching from a distance as Victoria's car finally pulled away from the cabin. Once her taillights disappeared around the bend, I approached cautiously, using the spare key our family kept hidden under a false rock in the garden. The cabin smelled of pine and memories, summer vacations, winter holidays, family gatherings, spanning decades. Photos lined the walls, and I noticed with a pang that several had been recently changed. New versions showed Victoria prominently with Grandpa, while I was either absent or pushed to the background. Focus, Emily. The safe. Grandpa's study in the cabin was smaller than the one at Oakwood, but no less personal. Books lined the walls, and his old fishing hat still hung on a hook by the window overlooking the lake. But where would he hide a safe? I ran my fingers along the wood paneling, thinking of the countless times I'd watched him in this room. He would sit in his worn leather chair, reading manuscripts while occasionally glancing up at the painting above the fireplace, a scene of Silver Lake at sunset that my grandmother had painted on their honeymoon. The painting, of course. I carefully removed it from the wall, revealing exactly what I'd hoped to find, a small wall safe with a combination dial. My fingers trembled slightly as I entered the numbers, 08-21-59. The safe opened with a satisfying click. Inside lay a sealed envelope labeled Last Will and Testament, Addendum, a small leather-bound book, and a USB drive similar to the one I'd found in the fountain pen case. I quickly photographed everything before removing the items. The addendum was exactly what Judith had described, a legally executed document naming me as the primary beneficiary of Harold Parker's estate, including his controlling shares in Parker Publishing. The handwritten note attached was brief but clear. My attorney has the original. This copy is for your records, M. Victoria found out about the DNA test and threatened to reveal damaging information about your parents if I didn't destroy this. I pretended to acquiesce but kept this copy safe. The truth on the USB drive explains everything. I'm sorry to place this burden on you, but the company needs a Parker at the helm. A real Parker, with the values this company was founded on. With love and faith in you, Grandpa. The leather book turned out to be a detailed account of Victoria's financial manipulations over the past 5 years, meticulously documented by Grandpa with the help of an outside accountant. The USB drive contained irrefutable digital evidence, emails, financial transfers, and recorded conversations proving she had been systematically undermining the company while preparing for its sale. As I was photographing the final pages, headlights swept across the cabin windows. Victoria had returned early. I hurriedly replaced the empty safe and rehung the painting, slipping the documents into my jacket just as the front door opened. Grabbing a random book from the shelf, I pretended to be reading when Victoria entered the study. Emily? Her surprise quickly morphed into suspicion. What are you doing here? Research for the anniversary edition, I improvised, holding up the book, ironically, a first-edition history of Parker Publishing. Nathan mentioned you had some of Grandpa's original notes here. Thought they might add a personal touch to my introduction. Victoria's eyes darted to the painting, then back to me. You should have called first. I'm working here this weekend. The planning meeting ended early. Her tone was clipped. I'm heading back to finish preparations for Monday's board meeting. She studied me intently. You seem different lately. More interested in company matters beyond your department. Just wanting to honor Grandpa properly, I replied, forcing a casual tone. The anniversary seems like the right moment to reconnect with his vision. Something shifted in Victoria's expression. A hardening. A calculation. His vision was progressive, Emily. Moving forward. adapting to changing markets, not clinging to nostalgic ideals that don't generate profit. Is that what Meridian Media is offering? Progress? The words slipped out before I could stop them. Victoria went very still. Who have you been talking to? People notice things, Vicky. Rumors circulate. Well, rumors are just that. Rumors. She moved to her briefcase, removed a folder, and handed it to me. Since you're so interested in company matters suddenly, you can review these marketing materials for the gala. Make yourself useful. As I took the folder, our eyes met in silent challenge. We both knew a line had been crossed, but neither was ready to acknowledge the coming battle openly. I should get going, I said, tucking the folder under my arm. Yes, you should. Victoria's smile didn't reach her eyes. Big week ahead. Life-changing, one might say. The threat was thinly veiled, but I refused to be intimidated. As I walked to my car, the documents from the safe securely hidden in my jacket, I realized the confrontation I'd been avoiding for years was now inevitable. My phone buzzed with a text from Nathan. Victoria left abruptly. Everything okay? I typed back. Found what we needed. Meeting tomorrow to plan next steps. The game had changed. Victoria had spent years erasing me from family photos and company history, positioning herself as the rightful heir to the Parker legacy. But Grandpa had ensured the truth would eventually come to light. Monday's board meeting was less than 48 hours away. By then, I needed to be ready to reclaim not just my inheritance, but my family's company and the principles it was founded on. As I drove back to Lakeside, the setting sun cast long shadows across the road, much like the shadows that had stretched across Grandpa's study when this all began. Whatever happened next would change everything, not just for me, but for everyone connected to the Parker name and legacy. The morning after my discovery at Silver Lake brought steady rain that drummed against my apartment windows as I spread the documents across my kitchen table. Evidence of Victoria's deception lay before me. Financial records, the will addendum, and Grandpa Harold's private journal detailing his suspicions and eventual confirmation that Victoria wasn't a Parker by blood. The revelation still felt surreal, like something from one of our publishing house's mystery novels rather than my actual life. My phone buzzed with a text from Nathan. Coffee, usual spot in 30 minutes? I gathered the documents into a folder, tucking it securely into my messenger bag before heading out. The Bluebird Cafe was busier than usual on Sunday morning, locals seeking refuge from the rain. Nathan had claimed our regular corner booth, 2 steaming mugs already on the table. You look like you haven't slept, he commented as I slid into the seat across from him. That obvious? I attempted a smile, but exhaustion pulled at the edges. I spent the night going through everything from the safe. I slid Grandpa's journal across the table, open to one of the most revealing entries. Nathan read silently, his expression darkening. This confirms what I've suspected about the educational division, he said finally. Victoria's been deliberately tanking its performance metrics to justify selling it off. Harold knew. He knew a lot more than that. I lowered my voice despite the cafe's ambient noise. Victoria isn't a Parker by blood. That's why she's been so desperate to secure her position. She's not technically eligible to inherit under the terms of the family trust. Nathan's coffee paused halfway to his lips. Wow. That explains the altered photos. She's been constructing a narrative, where her relationship with Harold was stronger than yours. And it goes beyond that. Look at these. I showed him photocopies of several company documents where subtle changes had been made. My name removed from project credits, Victoria's role expanded in meeting minutes, the gradual minimization of my contributions to the company over years. This is methodical, Nathan murmured, flipping through the pages. Almost pathological. The board meeting is tomorrow, I said, reclaiming the documents. Victoria is planning to announce the sale to Meridian Media. Once that happens, it'll be nearly impossible to undo. What's your plan? I hesitated. The question had kept me awake most of the night. The evidence I'd gathered was compelling, but presenting it meant potentially destroying not just Victoria's career, but her entire identity. Despite everything, she was still the sister I'd grown up with, the girl who had taught me to ride a bike and defended me from bullies in elementary school. I need to confront her first, I decided. Give her a chance to withdraw the proposal before I'm forced to reveal everything. Nathan's skeptical expression said what he wouldn't voice aloud. Victoria wasn't likely to back down. She never had. There's something else bothering me, I continued. Grandpa's journal mentions Victoria having leverage against my parents, something significant enough that he felt threatened by it. Any idea what it could be? I shook my head. Mom and Dad have always been, well, boring, stable, the most conventional people I know. Everyone has secrets, Em. The cafe door opened, sending a cold draft through the room. I glanced up reflexively and felt my blood freeze. Richard Parker, my father, stood in the doorway, scanning the Sunday morning crowd. When his eyes landed on our booth, his typically affable expression hardened. He's here for the farmer's market, I said quietly. Mom mentioned they were going this morning. Nathan followed my gaze. Should we invite him over? Before I could answer, Dad was already approaching our table, his raincoat dripping onto the worn wooden floor. Emily? Nathan? He nodded curtly. Diane mentioned she saw your car here. I thought I might catch you. Join us? Nathan offered, already sliding over to make room. Dad remained standing, his eyes fixed on my bag where the folder of documents was partially visible. Actually, I was hoping to speak with Emily. Alone. The walk to the lakefront park was silent despite the rain having eased to a fine mist. Dad moved with purpose, his shoulders tense under his raincoat. We found shelter beneath a gazebo overlooking the slate-gray water, deserted on this dreary morning. Victoria called me last night, he began without preamble. She said you were at the cabin going through Harold's things. I weighed my response carefully. I was researching for the anniversary edition. Emily. His voice carried a warning tone I rarely heard. Don't insult my intelligence. You were looking for the safe. The directness startled me. You knew about it? Of course I knew. I've been managing Parker Publishing's finances for 30 years. He turned to face me fully. What I want to know is why you're suddenly so interested in company matters you've largely ignored until now. The accusation stung. That's not fair. I've dedicated my career to our books. To the creative side, yes. Never to the business operations that keep those books financially viable. He sighed, some of the tension leaving his shoulders. Victoria says you've been acting strangely. Asking questions, working with Nathan to access company records. Shouldn't company records be accessible to a Parker? I challenged. Dad's gaze was penetrating. Is this about your position? Because if you're unhappy being a senior editor, this is about Victoria selling our family's company to Meridian Media without proper authorization. The words burst out before I could temper them. This is about her systematically undermining Grandpa's vision for years while positioning herself as his chosen successor. Dad's face paled slightly. Who told you about Meridian? Does it matter? The board votes tomorrow on a proposal that would effectively end Parker Publishing as an independent entity. The proposal has merit, Emily. The publishing industry is changing. Consolidation. Is that what she told you to say? I interrupted, frustration building. Have you even seen the actual proposal? Or the financial reports she's been doctoring for years? He fell silent, studying me with an expression I couldn't read. You sound exactly like Harold in his final months, convinced of conspiracies, fixated on protecting a legacy that may not be sustainable in today's market. It's not a conspiracy. If I have proof. I gestured to my bag. I have the amended will, Dad, the one that names me as the primary beneficiary. I have Grandpa's journal detailing Victoria's manipulation of company financials, and I have the DNA test results. The color drained completely from his face at those last words. He lowered himself onto a bench, suddenly looking every one of his 63 years. "She told you," he said quietly. "Grandpa did, through his records. Victoria isn't your biological daughter. She's from Mom's first marriage." I sat beside him, modulating my tone. "Why didn't you ever tell us?" Dad stared out at the lake, his expression distant. "It was never relevant. I love Victoria as my own. Always have, from the moment Diane and I married. She was only 3. But the family trust—" "Yes, the damned trust." Bitterness edged his voice. "Harold's father insisted on those bloodline provisions. Archaic and unnecessary, but legally binding. We thought it would never matter. Victoria would inherit my shares. You would inherit Harold's. The company would stay in family hands either way. Until Grandpa discovered the truth." Dad's shoulders slumped. Harold always had his suspicions. Victoria resembles Diane's first husband around the eyes. But he never pushed the issue until his health began failing and succession planning became urgent. "Why didn't you just tell him the truth from the beginning?" Dad's laugh held no humor. "Because we had to respect Diane's wishes. Her first marriage was complicated, abusive. When we fell in love, we decided a clean break was best for everyone, including Victoria. A fresh start. So you lied. For decades. We protected our family," he corrected firmly, "and Harold went along with it, until suddenly he didn't. The implications were staggering. My parents, whom I'd always seen as painfully straightforward, had maintained this fundamental deception throughout my entire life. Victoria, who'd always seemed so confident in her position, had built her identity on a carefully constructed fiction. This is the leverage Victoria has over you and Mom," I realized aloud. "The truth about her biological father." Dad nodded slowly. "She threatened to make the whole story public, including details about Diane's first marriage that would humiliate your mother. Harold backed down temporarily, but then he created that addendum anyway." He looked at me directly. "What are you planning to do with all this, Emily?" It was the question I'd been avoiding since finding the documents. What exactly was I prepared to do? Destroy my sister's career and identity? Expose family secrets spanning decades? Humiliate my parents in pursuit of what Grandpa believed was right? "I don't know yet," I admitted. "But I can't let Victoria sell the company." Even if it's the sound business decision? Is it? Or is that just what Victoria has manipulated everyone into believing? I pulled out the financial records from my bag. "Look at these. Really, look. The educational division isn't failing. She's deliberately undermined it by redirecting resources. The fiction imprint isn't struggling. She's delayed releases of our strongest titles to impact quarterly results." Dad reviewed the documents with growing concern, his financial acumen quickly grasping the implications. "This doesn't make sense. Why would she deliberately damage the company's performance? To justify the sale to Meridian, who've promised her a position as CEO of the merged entity." I pointed to an email exchange Grandpa had documented. "She gets more power, more money, and never has to worry about bloodline provisions in the family trust again." A heavy silence fell between us, broken only by distant thunder as another storm approached from across the lake. Dad continued studying the documents, his expression growing increasingly troubled. "I need to show these to your mother," he finally said, "and we need to talk to Victoria before tomorrow's board meeting." He gathered the papers carefully. "This doesn't have to become a public spectacle, Emily. We're still a family." "Are we?" The question emerged softer than I intended. "Victoria has been systematically erasing me from family photos, company records, everything that matters." "What kind of family does that?" Dad's expression softened. One where someone is very frightened of losing their place. As he stood to leave, raindrops began pattering against the gazebo roof again. Come to the house tonight, 7 o'clock. We'll talk through this as a family before taking any irreversible steps. I watched him walk away, his normally confident stride weighed down by revelations decades in the making. My phone buzzed in my pocket, Nathan checking in. I texted back that I'd fill him in later, then sat alone in the gazebo, listening to the rain and wondering what version of family would emerge from tonight's confrontation. The Parker family home sat on a tree-lined street overlooking the western edge of town, its Victorian architecture and wraparound porch unchanged since my childhood. As I pulled into the driveway at 6:55 p.m., I noted Victoria's sleek black car already parked in its usual spot. No avoiding the confrontation now. Mom answered the door before I could knock, her elegant appearance betrayed by worried eyes and a tight smile. Emily, come in. We're in the living room. The formal living room was rarely used except for holidays and important discussions, another bad sign. Dad stood by the fireplace, tumbler of scotch in hand. Victoria sat rigidly on the sofa, her expression unreadable. Finally, she said as I entered. Can someone explain why this family meeting couldn't wait until after tomorrow's board presentation? I have preparations to finish. I think you know why we're here, Victoria. Dad's voice was gentle but firm. Emily has found some concerning documents. Victoria's eyes narrowed as they fixed on me. I see. And what exactly has my little sister been investigating behind my back? I wasn't investigating anything initially, I replied, remaining standing. I found Grandpa's letter by accident. Everything else, you led me to with your actions. How dramatic. Victoria rolled her eyes. What specific actions are you referring to? In answer, I pulled out my phone and displayed the original and altered family photographs side by side, erasing me from family history for starters, doctoring company records, manipulating financial statements to justify selling to Meridian Media. Victoria's composure slipped momentarily before she recovered. Those photos were damaged. I had them restored as best I could. And I haven't manipulated anything. The company's performance speaks for itself. Victoria, Mom intervened quietly. We've seen the documents. All of them, including Harold's journal and the DNA test results. The room went completely still. Victoria's face drained of color as she looked from Mom to Dad, then back to me. You had no right, she whispered. I had every right, I countered. Parker Publishing is my inheritance too, my birthright according to Grandpa's amended will. Birthright. Victoria spat the word. That's really what matters to you, isn't it? Blood. Family. As if those accidents of birth determine our value. That's not... Do you have any idea, she continued, voice rising, what it was like growing up as the perfect Parker daughter? The expectations, the scrutiny, always having to prove I was worthy of the name? And then you came along, naturally talented, effortlessly charming, Harold's obvious favorite. That's not true, Mom objected. It absolutely is true, Victoria insisted. I worked twice as hard for half the approval. I gave my life to this company, while Emily got to explore her creative potential with no consequences, no pressure to perform. That's your perception, I said quietly. It wasn't my reality. Your reality? Victoria stood suddenly, her carefully, maintained poise cracking. Your reality was being born a real Parker, never having to question your place or worth. Do you know when I found out the truth? 5 years ago, by accident. I overheard Mom and Dad arguing about the trust provisions. 33 years old before I discovered my entire identity was a convenient fiction. The raw pain in her voice silenced us all. Mom moved to touch her arm, but Victoria pulled away. The worst part? Nothing changed. You all kept pretending, letting me believe I had a future at the company. Meanwhile, Harold was secretly rewriting his will, planning to hand everything to Emily because she had the correct DNA. It wasn't about DNA, Dad insisted. It was about your actions, the financial manipulations, the undermining of company divisions. I did what was necessary. Victoria's voice cracked. The market is changing. Educational publishing is a dinosaur. Harold refused to see it, clinging to outdated models because of sentimentality. So you decided to sell us out to Meridian? I challenged, without even a transparent discussion of alternatives. Victoria's laugh was hollow. Meridian offered the only viable path forward, one where I could protect what matters about Parker Publishing while shedding what doesn't work anymore. A path where my position wouldn't depend on whose biological daughter I am. The pieces finally clicked into place. Victoria's desperation, her systematic erasure of my presence, the financial manipulations, all stemmed from a profound insecurity about her place in the family and company. Finding out she wasn't a Parker by blood had shattered her identity, and every action since had been an attempt to secure what she felt she was about to lose. The board meeting is tomorrow, I said, softening my tone. What are you planning to tell them? The truth. Victoria lifted her chin. That Parker Publishing needs this merger to survive in a changing market. That's not the full truth, and you know it, Dad interjected. The company is financially sound. The supposed weaknesses you've been reporting were engineered. It doesn't matter. Victoria gathered her composure. The board trusts me. They've seen the projections, the market, analyses. The vote will pass. Unless I present Grandpa's amended will and journal, I said quietly. Unless I show them evidence of financial manipulation. Victoria went very still. You wouldn't dare. I don't want to, I admitted. Despite everything, you're my sister. But I can't let you sell Grandpa's legacy based on lies. Girls, please. Mom intervened. There has to be a solution that doesn't destroy everything we've built, as a family and as a company. Victoria turned to her, eyes blazing. Why didn't you tell me the truth? All those years, watching me strive to be the perfect Parker, knowing I never could be by blood. Why maintain the lie? Mom's composure cracked, tears forming in her eyes. To protect you. Your biological father was... He would have what? Victoria demanded. Dad stepped forward. He was abusive, Victoria. Dangerous. When we married, we agreed a clean break was safest for everyone, especially you. We wanted you to have a normal childhood, free from that connection. So you decided my entire identity should be based on a lie. Victoria's voice was ice. And now that lie is being used to take away the one thing I've earned on my own merits, my position at Parker Publishing. An uncomfortable silence settled over the room. The decades of deception, however well-intentioned, had created this tangled web of hurt and betrayal. No one was entirely innocent. No one was entirely guilty. It doesn't have to be this way, I finally said. We can stop the Meridian deal, restructure the company leadership. Under your control naturally, Victoria cut in bitterly. Not necessarily. The idea formed as I spoke it. We could share leadership, your business acumen, my editorial vision, the way Grandpa originally intended Parker Publishing to be run by his grandchildren. Victoria stared at me with suspicion. And the board would accept this arrangement. Why? Because the alternative is a public airing of everything. The amended will, the financial inconsistencies, the family secrets. No one wins in that scenario. I held her gaze. We're offering a third option. We? Victoria raised an eyebrow. I glanced at our parents. All of us. A family solution to a family problem. Dad nodded slowly. It could work. Complementary skill sets, shared authority. The board would see the stability in it. Victoria remained silent, her internal calculation almost visible behind her eyes. Finally, she asked, "And the trust provisions? The inheritance?" "We consult with the family attorneys," Mom suggested. "Find a legal framework that acknowledges both of you fairly, bloodline provisions notwithstanding." "Why would you agree to this?" Victoria directed the question at me. "You have all the leverage. Grandpa clearly wanted you to take control." The question gave me pause. Why indeed? The evidence I'd gathered could secure my position as the sole leader of Parker Publishing, fulfilling Grandpa's final wishes. Yet something about that outcome felt hollow. "Because Grandpa was wrong too," I admitted. "He let his disappointment in your actions cloud his judgment about your abilities. The company needs both of us, your strategic thinking and my creative direction. That balance was always Parker Publishing's strength." Victoria studied me for a long moment. "And if I refuse?" "Then I present everything at tomorrow's board meeting," I replied simply. "The decision becomes theirs." The grandfather clock in. The hallway chimed 7 times, marking the hour as we all considered the crossroads before us. Outside, the rain had stopped, and fading evening light filtered through the windows. "I need time to think," Victoria finally said, rising from the sofa. "The board meeting is at 10 a.m. I'll give you my answer by 9. As she moved to leave, Mom caught her arm gently. "Victoria, whatever you decide about the company, you will always be our daughter. That was never a lie." Victoria's expression softened fractionally before she pulled away. At the doorway, she paused, turning back to me. "For what it's worth, I never hated you, Emily. I just couldn't bear to live in your shadow, especially once I knew I wasn't really a Parker." After she left, the house felt emptier somehow. Mom excused herself, emotions finally overwhelming, her carefully maintained composure. Dad poured another scotch, offering me one that I declined. "Will she agree?" I asked him. He swirled the amber liquid thoughtfully. "Victoria has always been pragmatic. Given the alternatives, a shared leadership role is her best option. And if she doesn't see it that way, then you do what you must tomorrow." He set down his glass untouched. "But remember that companies can be rebuilt. Families once broken are much harder to repair." I drove home through quiet streets, the weight of responsibility heavy on my shoulders. The documents that could secure my inheritance, my birthright as I'd called it, sat in my bag like a loaded weapon. Using them would ensure my control of Parker Publishing, fulfilling Grandpa's wishes. But at what cost to the family I'd grown up with, the sister I'd shared everything with for decades? My phone buzzed with a text from Nathan. "Status update?" I typed back, "Complicated. Family meeting happened. Victoria considering compromise." His response came quickly. "Can you trust her?" Could I? Victoria had systematically erased me from family photos, manipulated company records, and planned to sell our heritage to competitors. Yet her pain tonight had been real. The agony of discovering her identity was built on a fiction, that her place in the family she'd tried so desperately to please was fundamentally different from what she'd believed. I didn't answer Nathan's text. Instead, I pulled into my apartment complex parking lot and sat in silence, watching the last light fade from the sky. Tomorrow would determine not just the future of Parker Publishing, but the shape of our family, for generations to come. The choice between inheritance and reconciliation lay before me, with no clear path forward. As midnight approached, my phone lit up with an email notification. The sender, Victoria Parker. The subject line, board meeting. Materials, confidential. With trembling fingers, I opened the attachment, a revised proposal for tomorrow's board meeting. Instead of the Meridian media sale, it outlined a new leadership structure for Parker Publishing. Victoria as CEO, me as Chief Creative Officer, with equal voting rights on the board. The brief message read simply, "We're still sisters. That has to count for something." review and respond by morning. I read the proposal 3 times, looking for hidden traps or veiled threats. Finding none, I typed back a single word. Agreed. For the first time in weeks, I slept without dreaming of betrayal or inheritance. Whatever tomorrow brought, we would face it as a family. Complicated, flawed, but still connected by bonds stronger than blood or business could fully explain. Dawn broke with unusual clarity over Lakeside, the storms of the previous days giving way to crisp blue skies. I stood at my apartment window, coffee in hand, watching early morning light glint off Lake Michigan in the distance. The serenity of the view belied the tension coiling through me. In 3 hours, the Parker Publishing Board would convene, and despite Victoria's midnight olive branch, I couldn't shake the feeling that our fragile truce remained just that, fragile. My phone chimed with a text from Nathan. Meeting you in the lobby at 9:15, bringing the market projections you requested. I'd spent the early morning hours researching alternatives to Victoria's leadership proposal, wanting to enter the boardroom armed with options. While I'd agreed to her power-sharing arrangement, experience had taught me to prepare for contingencies where Victoria was concerned. As I dressed in my most professional attire, a tailored navy suit that had been a gift from Grandpa when I published my first acquisition, I caught my reflection in the mirror. There was something different in my eyes now, a certainty that hadn't been there before. Whatever happened today, I was no longer the overlooked younger daughter. I was Emily Parker, rightful heir to Parker Publishing, ready to fight for my grandfather's legacy. Nathan was waiting as promised when I reached the lobby of my building, 2 coffee cups and a leather portfolio in hand. His usual casual attire had been replaced by a sharp charcoal suit. "You look ready for battle," he commented, handing me the extra coffee. "Is that what this is?" I accepted the cup with a grateful nod. "What else would you call a showdown with your sister over control of a multi-million-dollar publishing house?" His attempt at lightness didn't quite mask his concern. "Are you sure about this compromise? After everything she's done?" I sipped the coffee, buying time to formulate an answer I wasn't entirely sure of myself. "It's the solution with the least collateral damage. To your family, maybe. But what about the company? The employees who've watched Victoria systematically dismantle departments and undermine projects for years?" He held my gaze. "Sometimes clean breaks are necessary for healing to begin." The irony wasn't lost on me. The same justification my parents had used decades ago for concealing Victoria's parentage was now being offered for a different kind of deception. "Let's see how this plays out," I said finally. "I'm not surrendering, I'm strategizing. Victoria responded to my leverage with a compromise. That's progress." Nathan didn't look convinced, but he nodded, opening the car door for me. The drive to Parker Publishing headquarters passed in contemplative silence, each of us lost in our thoughts about what the day might bring. The company's red brick building stood proud against the blue sky, morning sunlight warming its facade. Employees streamed through the main entrance, most unaware of the power struggle about to unfold on the executive floor. I spotted Victoria's car already in her reserved parking space. "She's here early," Nathan noted. "She probably never left," I replied. Victoria was known for working through the night before important presentations. The receptionist greeted us with her usual warmth, though her eyes lingered curiously on my formal attire. As a senior editor, my typical workday rarely required more than business casual. "Good morning, Ms. Parker. Mr. Wilson, the board is gathering in the main conference room on 10. In the elevator, I checked my phone one last time. No additional messages from Victoria, just a brief text from Dad. "We'll be there. Stay calm." The executive floor hummed with anticipation. Administrative assistants moved with purpose, carrying folders and tablets, while junior executives clustered in hushed conversations that fell silent as I passed. News of my attendance at this normally closed-door meeting had clearly circulated. Outside the conference room, Victoria's assistant, Lindsay, intercepted us with practiced efficiency. Ms. Parker, Ms. Victoria asked me to provide you with the final agenda and presentation materials. She handed me a sleek folder embossed with the Parker Publishing logo. The board is already seated. You're expected to enter together with Ms. Victoria for the opening remarks. I exchanged glances with Nathan, who squeezed my arm reassuringly before heading toward the observer seating at the rear of the room. I'll be right there if you need anything, he promised. Victoria emerged from her office moments later, the picture of corporate poise in a crimson suit that conveyed both authority and confidence. When our eyes met, I detected something unexpected, uncertainty, perhaps even vulnerability, quickly, masked behind professional courtesy. Emily, you're early. She approached with measured steps. Did you review my revised proposal? I did. It's a starting point. A flicker of annoyance crossed her features. A starting point? I offered you equal voting rights and creative control. While maintaining your position as CEO, I pointed out, the balance of power remains with you. That's simply practical. I've been running the company for 3 years. And planning to sell it for at least 2 of those, apparently. Victoria glanced around, lowering her voice. Can we not do this? Here? The board is waiting. I nodded, restraining further comment. This wasn't the place for a sisterly showdown. The conference room doors loomed before us, solid oak panels that had witnessed generations of Parker business decisions. Ready? Victoria asked, her hand on the door handle. As I'll ever be. The Parker Publishing Board of Directors, 8, men and women representing decades of publishing experience, turned toward us as we entered. My parents sat at the far end, Dad's expression carefully neutral while Mom's eyes betrayed her anxiety. The chairman, Walter Bennett, a contemporary of Grandpa's who had served on the board since before I was born, rose to greet us. Victoria, Emily, thank you for joining us. His formal tone suggested he'd been briefed on the unusual circumstances. We understand there's been a significant development regarding the company's future direction. Victoria moved smoothly to the head of the table. Yes, Walter. If I may, I'd like to begin with a brief presentation that addresses both the previously circulated proposal and some recent adjustments. The next 20 minutes unfolded with practiced precision as Victoria guided the board through market analyses, competitive positioning, and financial projections. To my surprise, the numbers she presented were accurate. Not the manipulated versions I'd discovered in Grandpa's records, but honest assessments of the company's standing. Her performance was masterful, acknowledging challenges while emphasizing strengths, painting Parker. Publishing as a respected industry player facing evolutionary, not existential, threats. Which brings me to our path forward, she concluded, advancing to her final slide. After careful consideration and family discussion, I am withdrawing the Meridian Media acquisition proposal. A murmur of surprise rippled through the room. Several board members exchanged glances, while Walter leaned forward with interest. Instead, Victoria continued, gesturing for me to join her at the front. Emily and I are proposing a restructured leadership model that leverages both our strengths. I would continue as Chief Executive Officer, focusing on business operations and strategic partnerships, while Emily would assume the newly created role of Chief Creative Officer, overseeing all editorial functions with expanded authority over acquisition strategies and content development. As she outlined the details of our power-sharing arrangement, I studied the board members' reactions. Most seemed cautiously receptive, though Martin Reynolds, who had been a vocal supporter of the Meridian deal, appeared skeptical. This is quite a reversal, Victoria, he noted when she finished. Just last week, you were adamant that consolidation was essential for survival in the current market. Victoria didn't flinch. Further analysis has revealed additional opportunities for independent growth, particularly in our educational and digital divisions. Emily's insights were instrumental in reassessing our position. I see. Martin's gaze shifted between us, clearly sensing undercurrents. And this sudden partnership comes after years of what some might call different strategic visions between you two. Victoria began to respond, but I stepped forward. If I may address that point, Martin. You're right that Victoria and I have often approached publishing from different angles. She sees market forces and financial imperatives. I see creative opportunities and cultural impact. Parker Publishing has always thrived when balancing those perspectives. It's why Grandpa Harold built this company on partnerships that honored both. Walter nodded thoughtfully. Harold did always emphasize that tension between commerce and art was what made great publishing houses endure. He would often say that Victoria had his head for business, while Emily inherited his heart for literature. My father cleared his throat. As both a board member and father to Victoria and Emily, I can attest that this partnership proposal emerged from extensive family discussion. It represents not just a business strategy, but a recommitment to Harold Parker's founding vision. The board deliberation that followed was methodical, with questions about implementation, authority boundaries, and conflict resolution processes. Through it all, Victoria and I presented a united front, each deferring to the other's expertise, where appropriate. It felt strange, yet oddly familiar, like rediscovering a childhood rapport long forgotten. As the discussion neared its conclusion, Walter addressed us directly. Before we move to a vote, I must ask, is there anything else the board should know about this proposal or the circumstances leading to it? The moment of truth had arrived. Victoria tensed beside me, her breath catching slightly. The amended will, the financial manipulations, the altered photographs, all the evidence I'd gathered waited in my briefcase, ready to be revealed if necessary. Our gazes met briefly, decades of sibling complexity passing between us in that silent exchange. Nothing material to the decision before us today, I said finally. The board has all the relevant information needed to evaluate our leadership proposal. Relief flickered across Victoria's features, quickly masked by professional composure. Walter studied us both for a long moment, his decades of experience perhaps sensing the undercurrents we weren't verbalizing. Very well, let's proceed to a vote. The board approved our joint leadership proposal 7-1, with only Martin Reynolds dissenting. As congratulations were offered and next steps discussed, I caught Nathan's expression from the back of the room, a mixture of surprise and concern that I'd chosen compromise over confrontation. I gave him a slight nod, hoping to convey that this wasn't surrender but strategic patience. After the meeting adjourned, Victoria surprised me by suggesting we share the news with the executive team immediately. We should present this as a positive evolution, not a response to crisis, she explained as we walked toward the large conference room where department heads waited. Agreed. Stability will be key, especially for the departments that feared elimination under the Meridian deal. Victoria slowed her pace, allowing some distance between us and nearby staff. About those departments, particularly educational publishing, I may have been short-sighted in my assessment of their long-term value. Coming from Victoria, this qualified as a dramatic admission of error. Meaning? Meaning your proposal to revitalize rather than reduce that division deserves serious consideration. She stopped completely, turning to face me. Emily, what happened in there? You could have exposed everything. The altered records, the will addendum. You had the ammunition to take full control. And destroy our family in the process, I replied. Some victories aren't worth the cost. That's not how I would have handled it. The admission seemed difficult for her. I know. That's why Grandpa worried about your leadership. Not because you lack ability, but because you sometimes forget that Parker Publishing was built to be more than just a profitable business. Victoria's expression hardened momentarily before softening into something more contemplative. Perhaps it's good the company will have both perspectives now. She hesitated, then added, For what it's worth, I am withdrawing from the Meridian. Negotiations completely. No backdoor dealings, no hidden arrangements. I appreciate that. I studied my sister, seeing beneath her polished exterior to the vulnerability she rarely showed. This partnership will only work with complete transparency going forward. Understood. She straightened her shoulders, CEO persona sliding back into place. Shall we introduce the new leadership structure to the team? The executive presentation went smoothly, though news of the abrupt strategic reversal clearly surprised many department heads. Questions focused primarily on practical matters, reporting structures, approval processes, priority projects. Through it all, Victoria deferred to me on creative matters with a respect I hadn't experienced from her in years. As the meeting concluded, Nathan approached, congratulating us both with professional courtesy, though his eyes still held questions for me. This is certainly an unexpected development, but an exciting direction for Parker Publishing. Victoria nodded briskly. Sometimes the best solutions aren't the most obvious ones. Emily made that clear. She checked her watch. If you'll excuse me, I need to contact Meridian personally about our decision. They deserve to hear it directly, rather than through industry channels. After she left, Nathan turned to me. Okay, what just happened? Last night you were ready to expose everything, and now you're partners. I guided him toward my office, away from curious ears. It's complicated, Nathan. The evidence I gathered gave me leverage, but using it would have fractured the family beyond repair. This way, I can monitor Victoria's decisions while gradually implementing changes. You're giving her a second chance after she tried to erase you from the company, from your family history. His disbelief was evident. I'm giving us all a second chance, I corrected. Victoria, my parents, the company. Even Grandpa wasn't entirely right in how he handled this. Nathan shook his head. I hope you know what you're doing. So do I admitted. But something Grandpa wrote in his journal keeps coming back to me. Publishing is the business of legacy, of choosing which stories survive to shape the future. Maybe this is about choosing which version of our family story survives. Just be careful. People rarely change fundamentally. Maybe not. But their choices can evolve when given the right incentives. I smiled faintly. Besides, I still have all the evidence safely stored. Trust but verify, as Grandpa would say. The rest of the day passed in a whirlwind of meetings, calls, and emails as news of the leadership changes rippled through the company. By late afternoon, I found myself alone in my office for the first time, attempting to process the day's events. My new position would be announced formally tomorrow, with an office relocation to the executive floor already in progress. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. Mom stood in the doorway, her elegant appearance belying the emotional exhaustion in her eyes. May I come in? She asked quietly. I nodded, clearing space among the scattered papers on my visitor's chair. Mom sat gracefully, studying me with a mixture of pride and trepidation. You handled yourself beautifully today, she began. Your grandfather would have been proud. Would he? I effectively ignored his explicit wishes about company succession. Mom smiled faintly. Harold wasn't always right, especially near the end. He saw things in black and white when they were much more complicated. Like Victoria's parentage? The question emerged more sharply than I'd intended. Mom flinched slightly but didn't avoid my gaze. Yes, like that. She sighed, smoothing an invisible wrinkle from her skirt. I've been thinking about what you said last night, about basing our family on a lie. You weren't entirely wrong. I wasn't trying to judge your choices, Mom. I can't imagine how difficult that situation must have been. The difficult part wasn't leaving my first husband or starting over with Richard. Her voice softened with memory. The difficult part was watching Victoria grow up desperately trying to be the perfect Parker, knowing she sensed on some level that she had to earn her place in a way you never did. The observation struck uncomfortably close to Victoria's accusations the previous night. Is that why you never corrected Grandpa's favoritism toward me? Harold wasn't playing favorites. He was recognizing a kindred spirit. Mom reached over to take my hand. You and he shared something Victoria and I never quite grasped. That almost spiritual connection to literature, to words and their power. Victoria felt excluded from that bond. Yes, and we should have addressed it more directly. Mom squeezed my hand. Instead, we all fell into comfortable patterns. Harold mentoring you, Richard guiding Victoria toward business leadership, me trying to balance everyone's needs from the middle. The insight into our family dynamics made pieces click into place. Victoria's drive, her competitive edge with me, stemmed from more than simple sibling rivalry. It was a lifetime of trying to secure her place in a family where she sensed, perhaps, unconsciously, that her position was somehow different. What happens now? I asked. Between Victoria and me, I mean. We've agreed to a professional partnership, but the personal damage... Healing takes time. Mom stood, smoothing her dress. But you took the first step today, offering reconciliation, instead of retribution. That choice says more about who you are than any Parker DNA ever could. She moved toward the door, then paused. Your father and I are hosting a small dinner tonight. Just family. Victoria has agreed to come. Will you join us? The prospect of spending an evening with my newly complicated family was both daunting and necessary. What time? 7? And Emily? Mom's expression grew serious. Thank you for protecting our family today. I know you had other options. After she left, I found myself drawn to the window overlooking downtown Lakeside. From 10 stories up, the town appeared as Grandpa had often described it in his stories, a place of possibility nestled between land and water, where past and future coexisted in delicate balance. My phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. Moving. Some meetings to accommodate dinner tonight? Also, found something in my office you should have. Can you stop by before you leave? Curious and slightly wary, I made my way to the executive floor, where Victoria's assistant had already left for the day. Victoria's office door stood ajar, warm afternoon light streaming through the windows that overlooked the lake. She looked up from her computer as I entered, her professional demeanor slightly relaxed after the day's events. Thanks for coming up. I wanted to give you this personally. She gestured to an item on her desk. Grandpa's antique fountain pen sat in its burgundy leather case, the oak leaf emblem gleaming softly in the sunlight. This belongs with the chief creative officer, Victoria said simply. It always did. The gesture, returning the pen that had symbolized so much in our conflict, felt significant beyond words. Victoria, It's just a pen, she interrupted, though we both knew it wasn't. Also, I've had IT set up your system access for the executive databases. You'll want to review the acquisition pipeline as soon as possible. I've flagged several projects that align with your vision for the literary imprint. Business matters, safer terrain than emotional reconciliation. I accepted the shift gracefully. Thank you. I'll start reviews tomorrow after the formal announcement. Victoria nodded, then surprised me by asking, Do you remember when we were kids, how we used to play publishing house in Grandpa's study? The memory emerged vividly. Summer afternoons spent creating handmade books, Victoria handling the business with meticulous ledgers while I wrote and illustrated stories. You always made me sign a contract before you'd publish my books. A smile ghosted across her features. And you always insisted on creative control clauses that drove me crazy. Some things never change, I offered, returning her smile. Some things do. Victoria closed her laptop decisively. I never truly wanted to sell the company, you know. It just seemed the only way to secure my future once I learned about the blood requirements in the trust. We'll find another solution for that. Dad's already talking to the family attorneys. Victoria studied me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Why did you do it, Emily? Why offer partnership instead of taking control when you had every advantage? The question deserved an honest answer. Because Grandpa built Parker Publishing to connect people through stories that matter. What kind of story would we be creating? If I used his legacy to destroy my sister? Victoria's composure wavered momentarily. I haven't been much of a sister lately. Neither have I admitted. Too busy competing to remember we're on the same side. Are we? On the same side? The question held genuine uncertainty. We are now? I picked up the fountain pen, feeling its weight and history. Partners, remember? For the first time in years, perhaps the first time since childhood, Victoria's smile reached her eyes. Partners. As we left the office together, the sun cast long shadows across the hallway, not unlike the shadows that had stretched across Grandpa's study when this journey began. But shadows could be navigated when you knew where you were going, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of direction about both Parker Publishing and our family's future. The family dinner that evening at my parents' home carried a tentative warmth, everyone making conscious efforts to rebuild connections strained by secrets and competitions. We avoided business talk, focusing instead on shared memories and cautious plans for the upcoming holiday season. As I drove home under a star-filled Michigan sky, Grandpa's fountain pen secure in my jacket pocket, I reflected on the extraordinary turn of events. A week ago, I'd been the overlooked younger daughter, unaware of the manipulations happening around me. Now I stood as co-leader of Parker Publishing, entrusted with creative direction of my grandfather's legacy. The altered photographs that had started this journey remained evidence of a painful chapter, but perhaps not the defining one. Victoria and I had chosen a different narrative, one of reconciliation over revenge, partnership over division. Whether that choice would lead to lasting harmony or merely a temporary truce remained to be seen. What mattered now was writing the next chapter with intention and integrity, crafting a legacy that honored not just the Parker name, but the values it was meant to represent. After all, as Grandpa had taught me long ago, the most powerful stories were often those of redemption, of people finding their way back to their better selves after losing their path. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, restructuring departments, revitalizing the educational division, establishing the boundaries of our shared leadership. But tonight, I allowed myself to hope that our family business might actually bring our family back together rather than tearing it permanently apart. As I pulled into my apartment complex, my phone chimed with an incoming email. From Victoria, subject line, First Draft Joint Vision Statement. Opening it, I found a thoughtfully crafted document outlining our shared vision for Parker Publishing's future, honoring tradition while embracing innovation, balancing profit with purpose, recommitting to educational excellence while expanding our literary footprint. The final paragraph read, As sisters and now partners, we bring complementary strengths to Parker Publishing's leadership. Our commitment is to honor the legacy we've inherited by building a company that reflects the best of its founding principles. While fearlessly embracing the future of storytelling in all its forms, I began typing my response, suggestions and additions flowing easily. Our first collaboration as equal partners felt natural, as if we were finding our way back to that childhood dynamic of creative tension that produced something better than either of us could create alone. Whatever the future held, this moment, this choice to build rather than destroy, felt right. Parker Publishing would continue its story, not as Victoria's company or mine, but as ours. And perhaps that had been Grandpa's hope all along. 3 weeks into our joint leadership arrangement, I found myself in unfamiliar territory, Grandpa Harold's former office, now mine. The space had been transformed, the sterile modernity of Victoria's tenure replaced with a careful balance of tradition and innovation. Grandpa's original oak desk dominated the room, restored to its former glory, while sleek modern bookshelves housed both classics and contemporary titles published under my editorial direction. Photos of the Parker family through generations adorned one wall, including several restored images that properly included me, alongside Victoria and our parents. The transition hadn't been seamless. Whispers still followed me through the hallways. Some employees loyal to Victoria questioned my sudden elevation, while others wondered about the abrupt strategic reversal. Nathan had become my unofficial cultural translator, helping me navigate executive politics I'd previously observed only from the periphery. "The departmental budget reviews are ready for your approval," my new assistant, Megan, announced from the doorway. "And Mr. Wilson is here for your 11 o'clock?" Nathan entered carrying a thick folder, his expression a mixture of excitement and concern. Since our leadership restructuring, he'd been promoted to Director of Archive Development, tasked with expanding our digital preservation initiatives. "Please tell me that folder contains good news," I said, gesturing for him to take a seat. "I've already had 3 crisis meetings this morning." "Define good," he replied, spreading documents across my desk. "I've been digging through the archived correspondence between Harold and various authors, like you asked. Found something interesting in the Meridian Media background research." I leaned forward, intrigued. Despite Victoria's withdrawal from acquisition talks, I'd continued investigating Meridian's sudden interest in Parker Publishing. Something about their aggressive pursuit of our company didn't align with standard market strategy. "Apparently, this isn't the first time Meridian has attempted to acquire us," Nathan continued. "They approached Harold directly about 5 years ago with a similar offer. That was never mentioned in any board records. Because it never reached the board. Harold rejected the overture immediately." Nathan handed me a photocopied letter. This was his response to their CEO. Grandpa's distinctive handwriting filled the page with characteristic directness. "Parker Publishing is not merely a business enterprise, but a cultural institution with responsibilities beyond profit margins. Our educational division in particular serves a mission that transcends quarterly earnings reports. I must therefore decline your offer, regardless of its financial generosity." "Classic Grandpa," I murmured. "But why is this significant now? Victoria already withdrew the Meridian proposal." Nathan hesitated. "That's where it gets complicated. I found these financial records hidden in a misfiled acquisition report from when Victoria first began working with Harold. The documents revealed a separate company, Lakeview Holdings, that had been acquiring small percentages of Parker Publishing stock through various investment vehicles for years. The ownership traced through shell companies back to a familiar entity, Meridian Media. They've been attempting a stealth acquisition, I realized, buying up minor shareholdings to gain influence without triggering disclosure requirements. Nathan nodded grimly. They currently control approximately 11% through these various channels. Not enough for takeover, but enough to exert significant influence if combined with other shareholders. I studied the complex ownership diagram. Does Victoria know about this? That's what I can't determine. Some of these transactions occurred during her tenure as CEO, but they're deliberately obscured. She'd have to be actively looking to connect the dots. A knock at my office door interrupted us. Victoria stood in the doorway, immaculately dressed as always, though I'd noticed subtle changes in her wardrobe since our partnership began. Less severe styling, occasionally even incorporating the deep green that had been Grandpa's favorite. Color. "Am I interrupting?" she asked, glancing between us. "Just reviewing some archive findings," I replied, casually gathering the Meridian documents. "Did we have something scheduled?" "No, but I wanted to discuss the Education Division revitalization plan before the executive committee meeting." She entered, nodding politely to Nathan. "Your proposal has merit, but the financial projections need adjustment." Nathan stood. "I should get back to the archives. More documentation to process before the anniversary gala." After he left, Victoria settled into the visitor's chair, her posture relaxed but attentive. Working together these past weeks had revealed dimensions to my sister I'd rarely glimpsed before. Her meticulous attention to detail, her strategic thinking, her genuine concern for long-term employees. I reviewed your revisions to the literary imprint expansion, she began. The phased approach makes sense, though I still question the market timing for the Classics reissue series. The 100-year anniversaries of several modernist masterpieces create perfect marketing opportunities, I countered. Plus, our archived correspondence with those authors gives us unique supplementary content. Victoria nodded thoughtfully. Fair point. Speaking of archives, she gestured toward the documents I'd gathered. Anything interesting in Harold's records? The question seemed casual, but something in her tone made me wonder. Did she know about the Meridian connection? Was she testing me? Our newfound partnership remained delicate, trust gradually rebuilding through professional collaboration rather than personal reconciliation. We'd established an unspoken agreement to focus on moving forward rather than dwelling on past deceptions. Yet moments like this reminded me that full transparency remained aspirational rather than achieved. Just researching the historical context for the anniversary gala displays, I replied, choosing caution. Grandpa's correspondence reveals interesting connections between publishing decisions and cultural moments. Victoria studied me for a moment before nodding. The gala planning is progressing well. Ticket sales already exceed last year's event, and the governor confirmed his attendance yesterday. The Parker Publishing Anniversary Gala had been a lakeside tradition for decades, bringing together authors, industry leaders, and community figures to celebrate the company's cultural impact. This year's event, the first under our joint leadership, carried particular significance as a public statement about our new direction. Nathan mentioned wanting to create a special archival display for the gala, I said, highlighting Grandpa's correspondence with notable authors. Good idea. It emphasizes our literary heritage while acknowledging Harold's contributions. Victoria rose smoothly. I should mention, Martin Reynolds requested a meeting with both of us tomorrow. He didn't specify the topic, but given his opposition to our leadership structure, Martin, the lone dissenting vote on the board and a vocal advocate for the Meridian acquisition. I'll make time. Better to address his concerns directly. After Victoria left, I returned to the Meridian documents, a troubling theory forming. Martin's consistent push for the acquisition, the stealth stock purchases, Victoria's initial pursuit of the deal, were they connected? Had Victoria known about Meridian's slow infiltration of our company? The questions felt like betrayal of our fragile truce, yet ignoring potential threats to Parker Publishing would betray Grandpa's legacy. My intercom buzzed. Ms. Parker, Judith Lawson is here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but... Send her in, I interrupted, surprised. I hadn't seen our former housekeeper since our meeting at Bluebird Cafe weeks ago. Judith entered. With characteristic dignity, her silver hair neatly styled, her posture straight despite her years. Her eyes widened slightly as she took in the office. You've made it your own while honoring Harold, she observed, running a finger along the edge of the restored desk. He would approve. Thank you. It's still a work in progress. I gestured for her to sit. What brings you here, Judith? Is everything all right? She settled into the chair Victoria had just vacated, removing a small package from her handbag. I've been sorting through some personal effects, downsizing my apartment. Found something you should have. The package, wrapped in simple brown paper, contained a small leather-bound volume. Opening it revealed Grandpa's handwriting, dated, entries spanning his final year. Another journal? I asked, confused. I already have his business diary. This is different, Judith explained. More personal. Harold gave it to me for safekeeping shortly before he died. Said I'd know when it was time to pass it along. She met my gaze directly. After seeing the news about your partnership with Victoria, I decided that time had come. I opened to a random page, finding not business observations but deeply personal reflections. Watched Em and Vicky at the summer picnic today. Despite everything, the connection between them remains. That invisible thread that binds siblings even through conflict. In my efforts to protect what matters, I fear I've damaged what matters most. He was deeply troubled in those final months, Judith said quietly, torn between what he saw as his duty to the company and his love for both his granddaughters. Did he know he was dying? I asked, the question emerging from a place of old pain. Yes, though he shared that with very few people. The heart condition was more serious than he let on. Judith's expression softened with memory. He was trying to put everything in order. The company, the family legacy, his relationships. Some efforts were more successful than others. I turned to the final entry, dated just days before his death. Perhaps I've been wrong to force a choice. The company has always thrived on balance, art and commerce, tradition and innovation. Victoria and Emily each hold pieces of what Parker Publishing needs. My attempt to choose between them may be my final and greatest mistake. The words blurred as unexpected tears filled my eyes. Even at the end, Grandpa had been reconsidering his decisions, questioning his own judgment in a way I'd never witnessed. During his life, he was so certain about everything, I murmured. I never saw him doubt himself. Only those closest to him saw that side, Judith replied. Harold built his life around certainties, principles, standards, expectations, but his final illness forced him to confront life's essential uncertainties, including who should lead Parker Publishing after him. Precisely. Judith gestured toward the journal. Keep reading when you're ready. There's much there about both you and Victoria, his hopes, his concerns, his regrets. It might help you understand not just his decisions, but your sister as well. After Judith left, I should have turned to the waiting budget reports and marketing plans, but instead I found myself absorbed in Grandpa's private thoughts. The journal revealed a man wrestling with legacy and love in ways he'd never expressed openly. His pride in Victoria's business acumen tempered by concern over her methods. His connection with my literary sensibilities complicated by worry that I lacked the toughness publishing required. Most revealing were his reflections on our family dynamics. Watched Victoria presenting quarterly projections today. Her confidence masks deep insecurity, the fear of being found wanting that has driven her since childhood. Diane and Richard meant well in their decision, but children sense what remains unspoken. Victoria has spent her life trying to earn the Parker name that Emily was born with. The insight into my sister's inner life felt like a key turning in a long locked door. Victoria's drive, her competitiveness, her occasional ruthlessness, all stemmed from a fundamental insecurity I'd never fully recognized. While I'd been secure in my place as Grandpa's literary heir, she'd been constantly working to prove her legitimacy. My phone buzzed with a text from Nathan. Found more Meridian connections. Meeting on your calendar for 5 p.m. I closed the journal, returning reluctantly to my professional responsibilities. The afternoon passed in a blur of meetings and decisions, budget approvals for the literary imprint, acquisition discussions for a promising new author, marketing strategy sessions for the educational division relaunch. Through it all, Grandpa's journal weighed on my thoughts, particularly his final uncertainties about the company's leadership. Our current partnership with Victoria, born of compromise rather than conviction, suddenly seemed less like a tactical retreat and more like the wisdom Grandpa had been approaching in his final days. At 5, Nathan arrived with additional documents linking Martin Reynolds to Meridian Media. He's been consulting for them for years, Nathan explained, presenting meeting minutes from a subsidiary board where Martin's name appeared repeatedly. Nothing explicitly illegal about serving on multiple boards, but the conflict of interest in pushing for the acquisition is clear. And Victoria? Any connection there? Nathan hesitated. Nothing concrete, but there are gaps in the communication. Records during key periods. She was definitely meeting with Meridian executives more frequently than the board was informed. That doesn't necessarily imply collusion, I noted, playing devil's advocate despite my own suspicions. No, but this might. Nathan presented an email thread recovered from an archived server backup. The exchange between Victoria and Meridian's CEO discussed mutual benefits and post-integration leadership opportunities in carefully coded language. When was this? I asked, examining the dates. 6 months ago, well before the formal acquisition proposal was presented to the board. We can use that tomorrow. Tomorrow? Our meeting with him. I suspect he's planning to leverage his Meridian connection to threaten our new leadership structure. Her eyes held a familiar strategic glint. Unless we preempt him. The doorbell interrupted us, dinner arriving as promised. As Victoria arranged the food on plates, I found myself watching her with new perspective. Grandpa's journal entries illuminating aspects of her behavior I'd never fully comprehended. There's something else, I said as we settled at the small dining table. Judith Lawson brought me another of Grandpa's journals today, his personal diary from his final year. Victoria's fork paused halfway to her mouth. What does it say? Many things, but most notably that he regretted setting us against each other. Near the end, he began to believe the company needed both of us, your business sense and my creative vision. Victoria processed this information silently, emotions crossing her face too quickly to interpret. That contradicts the amended will, she finally said. Yes. He was conflicted, struggling with what leadership would best serve the company while also wanting to protect what he'd built. I met her gaze across the table. Sound familiar? A reluctant smile touched her lips. Uncomfortably so. Victoria, when you agreed to our partnership, was it just strategic retreat, or did you genuinely see merit in shared leadership? She considered the question with characteristic thoroughness. Initially, self-preservation. The alternative was public exposure and probable removal from the company. Her expression softened. But these past weeks, there's undeniable logic to combining our strengths. The Educational Division Revitalization Plan, for instance, your vision complemented by my financial restructuring has created something stronger than either of us would have developed alone. The admission felt significant, an acknowledgement of value beyond strategic necessity. Then we face Martin together tomorrow, I decided. Address the Meridian connection openly and reaffirm our unified leadership. Agreed. Victoria hesitated, then added, There's something you should know about Martin. His advocacy for the Meridian deal wasn't just about business alignment. There were personal incentives offered. Bribes? Nothing so crude. Board positions at Meridian subsidiaries, consulting contracts, all technically legal but ethically questionable. She met my eyes directly. I have documentation. I was collecting leverage against all potential opponents of the acquisition. The strategic calculation was pure Victoria, yet her willingness to share this information represented something new between us. You're suggesting we use this to neutralize his opposition to our leadership. I'm suggesting we ensure he understands the consequences of continuing to undermine Parker Publishing's independence. Victoria's expression remained steady. We don't have to use it unless necessary. The conversation shifted to safer ground as we ate, company matters, the upcoming gala, childhood memories of summers at the cabin. For perhaps the first time since childhood, we talked as sisters rather than competitors, finding unexpected common ground in our shared experiences and values. After dinner, we moved to the porch overlooking the lake, the spring evening cool, but pleasant. Stars reflected on the water's surface, mirroring the sky in perfect symmetry. Do you remember teaching me to swim out there? I asked, gesturing toward the lake. I was terrified of the deep water, but you wouldn't let me quit. Victoria smiled at the memory. You were stubborn even then. Refused to use the kickboard? Because I hadn't needed one. I wanted to be just like you, I admitted. You seemed so confident, so certain about everything. I was faking it. Victoria's voice softened with confession. Still am, most days. That's what no one tells you about leadership. The certainty people expect is usually performative. The vulnerability in her admission created space for my own. I've been terrified every day since taking the executive position. Constantly. Worried I'll make decisions that dishonor Grandpa's legacy. Harold wasn't infallible, Victoria noted. His personal journal proves he knew that, even if he rarely admitted it publicly. We fell silent, contemplating the weight of inheritance, not just of position or property, but of expectations and legacies that shaped our choices in ways we were only beginning to recognize. What would you have done? Victoria asked suddenly. If Martin had approached you directly with evidence of my Meridian negotiations, would you have removed me from leadership? The question deserved honesty. 3 weeks ago? Probably now. No, the company benefits from our different perspectives, even when they create tension. Good answer. Victoria reached into her jacket pocket, withdrawing a folded document. Because Martin did approach me yesterday with evidence of your independent investigation into company finances. He suggested I use it to challenge your authority, arguing that you were undermining our partnership with unauthorized research. The revelation stunned me. And you're telling me this instead of using it against me. Partnership requires transparency, your words. She handed me the document, a detailed report of my work with Nathan, including meeting times and access to files. Martin has been monitoring both of us, looking for divisions to exploit. He didn't expect me to share this with you. I examined the report, recognizing the strategic jeopardy it potentially created. Victoria could have easily framed my investigation as breach of trust, especially given the tentative nature of our reconciliation. Thank you for telling me, I said finally, for choosing transparency. It's what Harold would have wanted, Victoria replied, then corrected herself. It's what I want, for Parker Publishing and for us. The moment felt pivotal, a choice made not from strategic necessity, but from genuine commitment to our shared future. The stars continued their reflection, on the lake's surface, unwavering despite the occasional ripple disturbing the water. Tomorrow would bring the confrontation with Martin, requiring united defense of our partnership and company independence. Beyond that loomed the anniversary gala, where we would publicly present our shared vision for Parker Publishing's future. Challenges remained, trust still rebuilding, old habits of competition not fully relinquished, family wounds not completely healed. Yet, sitting beside my sister on the porch of our family cabin, I felt something I hadn't experienced since finding the altered photograph in Grandpa's study. Hope that the legacy he'd left us might become a foundation for reconciliation rather than division. Victoria and I were writing a different ending to the story that had begun with deception and betrayal, choosing shared leadership over solitary control, transparency over manipulation. As we watched the moon rise over Silver Lake, casting silver, light across the water, I realized we were no longer merely preserving Grandpa's legacy, but creating our own, one that honored his vision while transcending his limitations. The altered family photos that had catalyzed this journey represented the past. Our present choices would determine what images defined our future. We should head back, Victoria said eventually, checking her watch. Early meeting tomorrow. One moment. I pulled out my phone, moving to stand beside her with the moonlit lake behind us. We need a new photo, one where neither of us is erased or diminished. Victoria hesitated briefly before nodding, a smile slowly warming her features as she stood, shoulder to shoulder with me. I captured the image, two sisters framed by starlight and water, neither dominant nor subordinate, but equal in the frame, a visual representation of the partnership we were still learning to build. Some legacies were inherited. Others were created through conscious choice. As we drove back toward Lakeside, I felt certain that Grandpa would approve of the legacy Victoria and I were choosing to write together, one where family transcended blood, leadership embraced different strengths, and the Parker name stood for integrity rather than perfect certainty. Tomorrow would test our newfound unity. For tonight, that captured moment of sisterhood under the stars felt like promise enough. The grand ballroom of the Lakeside Hotel glittered with celebration, transformed for Parker Publishing's 60th anniversary gala. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over tables adorned with literary-themed centerpieces, each featuring miniature replicas of iconic books published throughout our company's history. I stood at the entrance, greeting arriving guests alongside Victoria, our complementary styles making a statement about our united leadership, her sleek midnight blue gown conveying authority, while my emerald dress with its vintage styling honored tradition. 3 months had passed since our confrontation with Martin Reynolds. That meeting had proven surprisingly anticlimactic. Faced with our united front and subtle reference to his Meridian connections, he had withdrawn his objections to our leadership structure. The board subsequently voted to remove him, citing undisclosed conflicts of interest. His replacement, Dr. Eleanor Chen from the university's literature department, brought fresh perspective to our governance. "Governor's arriving," Victoria murmured, straightening almost imperceptibly as the event photographer approached. "Ready for another official photo?" "As long as neither of us gets edited out this time," I replied, the joke possible now that enough healing had occurred between us. Victoria's smile held genuine warmth as we posed together, a far cry from the competitive tension that had defined our relationship for years. Working together had revealed surprising synergies, her financial acumen complementing my creative vision, my people skills balancing her sometimes clinical decision-making. We weren't just tolerating our partnership anymore. We were actively discovering its strengths. The photographer captured several images before moving on to other arriving dignitaries. Nathan approached, looking distinguished in his tuxedo, a glass of champagne in hand. "The archival display is drawing quite a crowd," he reported, "especially the correspondence between Harold and Ernest Hemingway. Who knew your grandfather could be so witty in rejection letters? Grandpa always said a good rejection should make the author want to try again," I recalled, smiling at the memory. "Is everything ready for the announcement?" Nathan nodded. "Unveiling scheduled for 8:30, after dinner but before dancing. Your parents are already stationed near the display, keeping it draped until the moment arrives." Victoria checked her watch. "We should begin seating guests. The governor hates when dinner runs late." As we moved through the ballroom, accepting congratulations and exchanging pleasantries, I caught glimpses of the company's evolution under our joint leadership. Department heads who had once reported to Victoria now approached me with equal respect. Editorial staff who had previously known me only as a senior editor now engaged confidently with Victoria on business matters. Our parents sat at the family table near the stage, their expressions reflecting cautious optimism about the evening. The journey to this moment had been difficult for them too. Decades of secrecy finally confronted, uncomfortable truths acknowledged. Family therapy sessions had begun addressing long-buried tensions, though complete healing remained a work in progress. Dinner proceeded with practiced elegance, culminating in Victoria's keynote address about Parker Publishing's illustrious past and promising future. She spoke with characteristic precision, but also with unexpected emotion, acknowledging Grandpa Harold's vision while celebrating our new direction. "Parker Publishing has always thrived at the intersection of commerce and creativity," she concluded, glancing meaningfully in my direction. "Tonight, we honor that legacy by announcing a new initiative that embodies both aspects of our mission." My cue to join her on stage arrived, and together we unveiled our most significant joint project, the Harold Parker Foundation for Literary Education, funded with 10% of company profits and focused on supporting literacy programs throughout Michigan. Our grandfather believed that books change lives, I explained to the assembled guests. This foundation will ensure that opportunity reaches communities often overlooked by traditional publishing initiatives. Applause greeted the announcement, particularly enthusiastic from the Educational Division employees whose department had been revitalized under our leadership. As we returned to our table, Victoria squeezed my hand briefly, a subtle acknowledgement of how far we'd come from the days when she had planned to sell that division to Meridian Media. Time for the archive. Unveiling, Nathan reminded us as dessert concluded. Everyone's moving toward the exhibition area now. The special display had been my passion project, a carefully curated collection of photographs, letters, and manuscripts, telling Parker Publishing's story through 60 years of literary history. At its center waited the veiled centerpiece, covered by burgundy velvet until the official unveiling. Victoria and I made our way through the crowd, accepting congratulations and fielding questions about upcoming titles. When we reached the exhibition area, our parents stood waiting, Mom's eyes suspiciously bright with unshed tears. "It's perfect," she whispered, embracing me briefly. "He would be so proud of both of you." That meeting had proven surprisingly anticlimactic. Faced with our united front and subtle reference to his Meridian connections, he had withdrawn his objections to our leadership structure. The board subsequently voted to remove him, citing undisclosed conflicts of interest. His replacement, Dr. Eleanor Chen from the university's literature department, brought fresh perspective to our governance. "Governor's arriving," Victoria murmured, straightening almost imperceptibly as the event photographer approached. "Ready for another official photo?" "As long as neither of us gets edited out this time," I replied, the joke possible now that enough healing had occurred between us. Victoria's smile held genuine warmth as we posed together, a far cry from the competitive tension that had defined our relationship for years. Working together had revealed surprising synergies, her financial acumen complementing my creative vision, my people skills balancing her sometimes clinical decision-making. We weren't just tolerating our partnership anymore. We were actively discovering its strengths. The photographer captured several images before moving on to other arriving dignitaries. Nathan approached, looking distinguished in his tuxedo, a glass of champagne in hand. "The archival display is drawing quite a crowd," he reported, "especially the correspondence between Harold and Ernest Hemingway. Who knew your grandfather could be so witty in rejection letters? Grandpa always said a good rejection should make the author want to try again," I recalled, smiling at the memory. "Is everything ready for the announcement?" Nathan nodded. "Unveiling scheduled for 8:30, after dinner but before dancing. Your parents are already stationed near the display, keeping it draped until the moment arrives." Victoria checked her watch. "We should begin seating guests. The governor hates when dinner runs late." As we moved through the ballroom, accepting congratulations and exchanging pleasantries, I caught glimpses of the company's evolution under our joint leadership. Department heads who had once reported to Victoria now approached me with equal respect. Editorial staff who had previously known me only as a senior editor now engaged confidently with Victoria on business matters. Our parents sat at the family table near the stage, their expressions reflecting cautious optimism about the evening. The journey to this moment had been difficult for them too. Decades of secrecy finally confronted, uncomfortable truths acknowledged. Family therapy sessions had begun addressing long-buried tensions, though complete healing remained a work in progress. Dinner proceeded with practiced elegance, culminating in Victoria's keynote address about Parker Publishing's illustrious past and promising future. She spoke with characteristic precision, but also with unexpected emotion, acknowledging Grandpa. Harold's vision while celebrating our new direction. Parker Publishing has always thrived at the intersection of commerce and creativity, she concluded, glancing meaningfully in my direction. Tonight, we honor that legacy by announcing a new initiative that embodies both aspects of our mission. My cue to join her on stage arrived, and together we unveiled our most significant joint project, the Harold Parker Foundation for Literary Education, funded with 10% of company profits and focused on supporting literacy programs throughout Michigan. Our grandfather believed that books change lives, I explained to the assembled guests. This foundation will ensure that opportunity reaches communities often overlooked by traditional publishing initiatives. Applause greeted the announcement, particularly enthusiastic from the educational division employees whose department had been revitalized under our leadership. As we returned to our table, Victoria squeezed my hand briefly, a subtle acknowledgement of how far we'd come from the days when she had planned to sell that division to Meridian Media. Time for the archive. Unveiling, Nathan reminded us as dessert concluded. Everyone's moving toward the exhibition area now. The special display had been my passion project, a carefully curated collection of photographs, letters, and manuscripts, telling Parker Publishing's story through 60 years of literary history. At its center waited the veiled centerpiece, covered by burgundy velvet until the official unveiling. Victoria and I made our way through the crowd, accepting congratulations and fielding questions about upcoming titles. When we reached the exhibition area, our parents stood waiting, Mom's eyes suspiciously bright with unshed tears. "It's perfect," she whispered, embracing me briefly. "He would be so proud of both of you." He would be so proud of both of you. Dad nodded agreement, his normally reserved demeanor softened by emotion and perhaps the evening's champagne. "Your grandfather always said Parker Publishing's greatest asset was its people." He was right, though he might not have predicted how it would play out. The crowd gathered around the veiled centerpiece as Nathan called for attention. "Ladies and gentlemen, to commemorate 60 years of Parker Publishing, please welcome Emily and Victoria Parker for a special presentation." Victoria began with practiced grace. "Throughout tonight's celebration, many have asked about the legacy our grandfather left to Parker Publishing. While his business acumen and literary instincts built this company's foundation, his true gift was understanding that different perspectives strengthen rather than threaten an organization." I continued, seamlessly. "With that in mind, we've created something special to honor not just Parker Publishing's past, but its future." Together, we removed the velvet covering, revealing a large, elegantly framed photograph. The image showed 4 generations of the Parker family at Silver Lake. Grandpa Harold's father, who had founded the original print shop. Grandpa himself, in his prime. Our parents in their younger days. And Victoria and me as children, arms linked as we stood at the lake's edge. Unlike the altered photos I had discovered months ago, this image had been digitally restored to its original state, with everyone present and equal in the frame. Surrounding this central photo were smaller images showing the company's evolution, authors at book signings, printing presses in operation, educational materials being delivered to schools, employees gathered at holiday celebrations through the decades. The display captured Parker Publishing not just as a business, but as a community that had touched countless lives. "Our grandfather taught us that publishing is about legacy," Victoria explained to the attentive crowd. "About choosing which stories endure. But he also taught us, sometimes through difficult lessons, that the most important legacy isn't built on exclusion, but on inclusion," I added. "Not on erasing differences, but on embracing them." As applause filled the room, I caught Judith Lawson's eye from where she stood near the back. The former housekeeper nodded approvingly, her expression suggesting she understood the journey that had brought us to this moment of public unity. The evening continued with dancing and celebration, but an hour later, Victoria and I found ourselves momentarily alone on the hotel's terrace overlooking Lake Michigan. The spring night was unusually warm, stars reflected in the vast water just as they had been at Silver Lake during our conversation months ago. "Successful night," Victoria noted, her businesslike tone belied by the satisfaction in her eyes. The foundation announcement has already generated positive press. And the restored family photos made Mom cry, which I count as a win, I added, smiling. She needed to see that healing is possible, even after decades of secrecy. Victoria nodded, contemplative as she gazed out over the water. I've been thinking about identity lately. How much of who we are is defined by biology versus choice? Heavy thoughts for a celebration night. Perhaps. She turned to face me directly. But relevant. For years, I defined myself by the Parker name, building my entire identity around proving I deserved it. When I discovered I wasn't biologically a Parker, it felt like losing my foundation. The vulnerability in her admission created space for my own honesty. And I defined myself in opposition to you, the creative to your corporate, the heart to your head. Both approaches limited us. And the company, Victoria acknowledged. Harold understood that, I think, toward the end. From inside came the sounds of celebration continuing. Laughter, music, the clinking of glasses. Our public success was unquestionable, the company thriving under our joint leadership in ways that exceeded even optimistic projections. I filed paperwork last week to legally change my middle name, Victoria said quietly. Oh. I hadn't known. She was considering this. I've been Elizabeth Victoria Caldwell Parker all my life, she explained, naming her mother's first husband. Now I'm Elizabeth Victoria Parker, officially and completely. The significance wasn't lost on me, not a rejection of her biological heritage, but an affirmation that family transcended genetics. Dad will be touched. He already knows. Signed as witness on the documents. She smiled faintly. Some choices matter more than circumstances of birth. Like her choice to share the Meridian evidence rather than using it against me. Like my choice to offer partnership instead of claiming sole control. Like our joint decision to honor Grandpa's legacy while creating our own path forward. We should get back inside, I suggested as a cool breeze rippled off the lake. They'll be cutting the anniversary cake soon. Victoria nodded, but hesitated before turning toward the ballroom. One more thing. She withdrew a small box from her evening bag. This is for you, not a company gift, a sister gift. Inside lay an exquisite replica of Grandpa's antique fountain pen, sized for my hand rather than his, with the dual initials VP and EP engraved in flowing script. For signing the important things, Victoria explained. Joint decisions, equal authority. The gesture represented more than a pen. It acknowledged our shared heritage and future, the balance we were learning to maintain between independence and collaboration. Thank you, it's perfect. As we rejoined the celebration, I reflected on the journey that had begun with discovering an altered photograph. What had started as a battle for inheritance had evolved into something more valuable. A genuine partnership based not on obligation, but on choice. Not on fear, but on recognition of complementary strengths. The family photos no longer needed, altering because the reality had changed. Victoria and I weren't competing for space in the frame anymore. We were creating a new picture together, one where both of us stood in the proper light. Later that night, after the last guests had departed and hotel staff began the cleanup, Nathan found me collecting a few personal items from the exhibition. Quite a transformation, he observed, gesturing toward a candid photo someone had taken, of Victoria and me laughing together during the evening. From discovering she'd erased you from family photos to this authentic connection. Did you ever imagine this outcome when you found that first altered photograph? I considered his question. Honestly, never. I thought it would end with one of us claiming victory while the other lost everything. And instead, we both gave up something to gain something better. I carefully wrapped Grandpa's journal to take home. Victoria surrendered her need for complete control, I let go of my righteous anger. The company got stronger leadership than either of us could provide alone. The anniversary gala marked not an ending, but a milestone in an ongoing journey. Challenges remained, in business, in family relationships, in the continuing work of healing old wounds. Yet the path forward felt clearer than it had 6 months ago when I first discovered that photograph in Grandpa's study. Some legacies were inherited, like Parker Publishing itself. Others were chosen, like the partnership Victoria and I continued to build day by day. The most valuable, perhaps, emerged from transformation, the willingness to see family and history through new perspectives, discovering truth in the spaces between competing narratives. As I left the hotel, the first light of dawn touched the horizon over Lake Michigan. Grandpa had often quoted Hemingway about the world being a fine place, worth fighting for. In fighting for Parker Publishing, Victoria and I had rediscovered something worth far more: the family connection that no inheritance could replace, no will could mandate, and no photograph could permanently erase. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.